Neurotransmitters and behavior. Introduction. In this study session, we will examine the relationship between neurotransmitters and behavior. Specifically, we will explore how neurotransmitters inform behavior. 2. Outline the mechanism of impulse transmission. Describe the major types of neurotransmitters and their functions. Explain Dale's law. Discuss neurotransmitters, brain disorders and medications. Explain the relationship between addiction, transmitters and behavior. Mechanism of impulse transmission. Neurotransmitters are chemicals located and released in the brain to allow an impulse from one nerve cell to pass to another nerve cell. There are approximately 50 neurotransmitters identified. There are billions of nerve cells located in the brain, which do not directly touch each other. Nerve cells communicate messages by secreting neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters can excite or inhibit neurons, which are nerve cells. Some common neurotransmitters are acetylcholine, norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, and gamma-aminobutyric acid. Acetylcholine and norepinephrine are excitatory neurotransmitters, while dopamine, serotonin, and GABA are inhibitory. Each neurotransmitter can directly or indirectly influence neurons in a specific portion of the brain, thereby affecting behavior. A nerve impulse travels through a nerve in a long, slender structure called an axon, and it eventually reaches a structure called the presynaptic membrane, which contains neurotransmitters to be released in a free space called the synaptic cleft. Freely flowing neurotransmitter molecules are picked up by receptors, structures that appear on cellular surfaces that pick up molecules that feed them into a lock and key, located in a structure called the postsynaptic membrane of another nearby neuron. Once the neurotransmitter is picked up by receptors in the postsynaptic membrane, the molecule is internalized in the neuron and the impulse continues. The process of nerve cell communication is extremely rapid. Once the neurotransmitter is released from the neurotransmitter vessels of the presynaptic membrane, the normal movement of the molecules should be directed to receptor sites located on the postsynaptic membrane. However, in certain disease states, the flow of the neurotransmitter is defective. For example, in depression, the flow of the inhibitory neurotransmitter serotonin is defective and molecules flow back to their originating sites, which is the presynaptic membrane, instead of to receptors on the postsynaptic membrane that will transmit the impulse to a nearby neuron. The mechanism of action and localization of neurotransmitters in the brain has provided valuable information concerning the cause of many mental disorders, including clinical depression and chemical dependency, and in researching medications that allow normal flow and movement of neurotransmitter molecules. Major types of neurotransmitters. Number 1. Acetylcholine, which affect arousal, attention, memory, motivation, movement. Too much can cause spasms or tremors. Too little can cause paralysis or torpor. 2. Dopamine. Inhibits wide range of behaviors and emotions, including pleasure, implicated in schizophrenia and Parkinson's disease. Serotonin. Inhibits virtually all activities. The transmitter is important for sleep onset, mood, eating behavior. Norepinephrine, which affect arousal, wakefulness, learning, memory, and mood. Endorphin and ephedrine inhibits transmission of pain messages. Dale's law. No single neuron releases all these transmitters. In fact, it was long believed that each neuron stores and releases only one transmitter. This generalization is known as Dale's law. Recent knowledge has proved that this is not perfectly true. However, all branches of an axon releases and transmits the same transmitter. Dale's law applies to the transmitter that the presynaptic end of a neuron releases, not to the transmitters that the postsynaptic side receives. Although a neuron releases only one or two transmitters, it may receive a number of different transmitters at various synapses. Neurons that release a particular transmitter are clustered together, not scattered randomly throughout the brain. Diet and synthesis of transmitters. Every synaptic transmitter is synthesized in the appropriate neuron from constituents that come from the diet. Under normal circumstances, the brain maintains fairly constant levels of each transmitter during periods. Nevertheless, if the diet has a high or low concentration of the precursors necessary for making a particular transmitter, the brain may produce a slightly higher or lower than usual amount of that transmitter. Acetylcholine is synthesized from choline, which is available in cauliflower and milk. Choline can also be made from lecithin, a component of egg yolk, liver, soybeans, butter, peanuts, and several other foods. Most proteins contain only small amounts of the amino acid tryptophan, the precursor of serotonin. Carbohydrates cause an increase in the release of insulin. Neurotransmitter, mental disorders, and medications. Schizophrenia. Impairment of dopamine-containing neurons in the brain is implicated in schizophrenia, a mental disease marked by disturbances in thinking and emotional reactions. Medications that block dopamine receptors in the brain, such as chlorpromazine and clozapine, have been used to alleviate the symptoms and help patients return to a normal social setting. Depression. In depression, which afflicts about 3 to 5% of the population, there appears to be normal excess or inhibition of signals that control mood, thought, pain, and other sensations. Depression is treated with antidepressants that affect norepinephrine and serotonin in the brain. The antidepressants help correct the abnormal neurotransmitter activity. A newer drug, fluoxetine, Prozac, is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor (SSRI) that appears to establish the level of serotonin required to function at a normal level. As the name implies, the drug inhibits the reuptake of serotonin neurotransmitter from synaptic gaps, thus increasing neurotransmitter action. In the brain, then, the increased serotonin activity alleviates depressive symptoms. Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease, which affects an estimated 4 million Americans, is characterized by memory loss and the eventual inability for self-care. The disease seems to be caused by a loss of cells that secrete acetylcholine in the basal forebrain, region of the brain that is the control center for sensory and associative information processing and motor activities. Some medications to alleviate the symptoms have been developed, but presently there is no known treatment for the disease. Generalized anxiety disorder. People with generalized anxiety disorder (GAD) experience excessive worry that causes problems at work and in the maintenance of daily responsibilities. Evidence suggests that GAD involves several neurotransmitter systems in the brain, including norepinephrine and serotonin. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. People affected by attention deficit hyperactivity disorder (ADHD) experience difficulties in the areas of attention, overactivity, impulse control, and distractibility. Research shows that dopamine and norepinephrine imbalances are strongly implicated in causing ADHD, drug, transmitters, and behavior. Cocaine and crack cocaine are psychostimulants that affect neurons containing dopamine in the areas of the brain known as the limbic and frontal cortex. When cocaine is used, it generates a feeling of confidence and power. However, when large amounts are taken, people crash and suffer from physical and emotional exhaustion as well as depression. Opiates, such as heroin and morphine, appear to mimic naturally occurring peptide substances in the brain that act as neurotransmitters with opiate activity called endorphins. Natural endorphins of the brain act to kill pain, cause sensation of pleasure, and cause sleepiness. Endorphins released with extensive aerobic exercise, for example, are responsible for the rush that long-distance runners experience. It is believed that morphine and heroin combine with the endorphin receptors in the brain, resulting in reduced natural and endorphin production. As a result, the drugs are needed to replace the naturally produced endorphins and addiction occurs. Attempts to counteract the effects of the drug involve using medications that mimic them, such as naloxone, naloxone, and naltrexone. Alcohol is one of the depressant drugs in wide use and is believed to cause its effects by interacting with the GABA receptor. Initially, anxiety is controlled, but greater amounts reduce muscle control and delay reaction time due to impaired thinking. Neurotransmitter systems. Neurons expressing certain types of neurotransmitter sometimes form distinct systems, where activation of the system causes effects in large volumes of the brain called volume transmission. The major neurotransmitter systems are the noradrenaline, norepinephrine system, the dopamine system, the serotonin system, and the cholinergic system. Drugs targeting the neurotransmitter of such systems affect the whole system, which explains the mode of action of many drugs. Cocaine, for example, blocks the reuptake of dopamine, leaving these neurotransmitters in the synaptic gap longer. Prozac is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor (SSRI), hence potentiating the effect of naturally released serotonin. AMPT prevents the conversion of tyrosine to L-DOPA, the precursor to dopamine. Reserpine prevents dopamine storage within vessels, and deprenyl inhibits monoamine oxidase (MAOB) and thus increases dopamine level. Diseases may affect specific neurotransmitter systems. For example, Parkinson's disease is at least in part related to failure of dopaminergic acid in deep brain nuclei, for example, the substantia nigra. Treatment potentiating the effect of dopamine precursors have been proposed and effected with moderate success. Transmitter systems, origin and effects. Noradrenaline originates from locus coeruleus and lateral tegmental field. It influences arousal. Dopamine originates from dopamine pathways in the mesocortical pathway. It is responsible for motor systems, cognition, and nausea. Serotonin systems originates from the caudal dorsal raphe nucleus, rostral dorsal raphe nucleus. It is responsible for increased introversion, mood, anxiety, body temperature, and sleep, while decreasing in conception. No choleric systems originate from the basal optic nucleus of Maynard's medial septal nucleus. It is responsible for learning, short-term memory, and arousal. Study session summary. In this study session, you learned the following. Neurotransmitters are chemicals located and released in the brain to allow an impulse from one nerve cell to pass to another nerve cell. There are approximately 50 neurotransmitters identified. Neurotransmitters can excite or inhibit neurons or nerve cells. Some common neurotransmitters are acetylcholine, norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, gamma aminobutyric acid. Acetylcholine and norepinephrine are excitatory neurotransmitters, while dopamine, serotonin, and GABA are inhibitory. Each neurotransmitter can directly or indirectly influence neurons in a specific portion of the brain, thereby affecting behavior. Once the neurotransmitter is released from the neurotransmitter vesicle of the presynaptic membrane, the normal movement of muscles should be directed to receptor sites located on the postsynaptic membrane. However, in certain disease states, the flow of the neurotransmitter is defective. Dale's law posits that no single neuron releases all transmitters. In fact, it was long believed that each neuron stores in take two. In fact, it was long believed that each neuron stores releases only one transmitter. This generalization was known as Dale's law. Every synaptic transmitter is synthesized in the appropriate neurons from constituents that come from the diet. End of study session 6. Thanks for listening.